Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is episode 61, where we are talking Novocaine, Jack Quaid's newest normal guy action movie. I'm looking forward to talking all about this. I saw it last night. I have lots of thoughts, and I think you'll be surprised by my review. But before all that, how are we all doing? I hope you are all doing well. Guys, it's Friday morning. I got my coffee. I slept like a baby last night. I'm no longer sick. There's a new Chapel Roan song out. It's like nearly springtime. We have more sunlight. Life is worth living, everybody. I also have my first job interview I have a screening call, I think, today with a recruiter. And after 50 plus applications, where for most of them you don't even hear back, it feels good to just be like, oh, there is a human out there that wants to talk to you. So I'm looking forward to that. But as for today, we are going to have a fun episode, guys. In What Else I Watched, I actually have so much stuff to cover because I have been binge watching a bunch of movies for my YouTube video that I think is going to come out, I want to say Friday the 28th, but it may come out Wednesday the 26th, depending. I kind of like putting it out on the last Wednesday of the month, but more on that. I won't say what the subject's going to be, but maybe you'll figure out what it's at least about, just judging by the What Else I Watched segment. But as for today's episode, we are covering Novocaine. I know there's the Electric State out, there's Black Bag, there's Opus, there's the new Looney Tunes movie. I'm seeing those all next week, and the Electric State I'll probably watch this Sunday, but I wanted to do an episode on Novocaine because I feel like I've talked about it for a while. Everything else I will talk about next week, I promise. But today, timestamps below. If you don't want any spoilers for Novocaine, just listen to the non-spoiler section. I will make sure I am careful not to spoil anything, but I will say that most of the trailer is what the movie is, but there's still some fun twists that we can jump into. But before we get into Novocaine, let's talk the news of the week. All right, well, the first piece of news involves Elizabeth Olsen, who is set to star in Seven Sisters, a drama pilot ordered by FX, with Sean Durkin of The Iron Claw. So Seven Sisters reunites Olsen and Durkin a decade and a half after the award-winning 2011 movie Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, written and directed by Durkin in his feature directorial debut. I had no clue they even worked together, but I've been wondering what's Sean Durkin going to do after The Iron Claw, which very early in the show, in the first couple episodes, we talked about The Iron Claw when we were getting into the Oscar season and my 2024 roundup, or 2023 roundup. Jesus, that was forever ago. I loved The Iron Claw, and I thought it was so well directed and the story was so well told, so I'm very interested what he was going to do next. And I think he also has a film coming out, but honestly, FX makes good TV, guys. FX just has a lot of bangers. Of course, they've had It's Always Sunny for, forever now, since 2004, 2005, but this looks really cool. So Deadline are saying that in Seven Sisters, a large tight-knit family begins to unravel when a sister, played by Olsen, starts communicating with a voice no one else can hear, forcing each of them to confront long-buried secrets. Garrett Bash is set to direct, and if the pilot goes forward, it would mark Bash's 5th series for FX, where his company Dive has long-standing first-look deal following Devs, Reservation Dogs, What We Do in the Shadows, and the upcoming Tulsa noir drama starring Ethan Hawke. Ooh, that sounds really good. He also most recently executive produced Ripley for Netflix, Time Bandits for Apple TV Plus, and Interior Chinatown for Hulu. Bosch's recent feature credits include Taika Waititi's Next Goal Wins and the upcoming Clara and the Sun. So this all sounds very interesting, and maybe I won't talk about it in What Else I Watched today, but just talking about Elizabeth Olsen. So, okay, 2 movies I watched this week in What Else I Watched that I'll share my actual thoughts on the movies, but watching Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch from Age of Ultron to Multiverse of Madness, it's insane the amount of growth she has in the character, the complexity. Of course, she's gotten to know the character over probably a decade, I would say, and she is amazing in Multiverse of Madness. But in Age of Ultron, I don't think she is very good in that. Her accent just goes in and out. Sometimes it turns British, and it's really weird, but also their performance just doesn't really work, especially beside Aaron Taylor-Johnson as Quicksilver. I think the two of them are just really wasted in the movie, but I really love Elizabeth Olsen. There was Three Sisters. Is that the Netflix movie that came out last year with her, Carrie Coon, and Natasha Lyonne? If you want a good Elizabeth Olsen film, watch that because she is fantastic in that movie. All 3 of them are, actually. That's just a really interesting family movie dealing with a loved one who's, on their deathbed and how you kind of come together and you have to rally with each other, put aside your differences, all that stuff. A lot of stuff to process in that movie. But anyways, Elizabeth Olsen, what I'm trying to say is I'm really loving her growth. I mean, we've even within Marvel movies where sometimes the performances movies don't have to be that great because it is in this Marvel world. So it's like John Mulaney said, Angela Bassett was nominated for an Oscar for a Marvel movie. That's like winning a Pulitzer for a Reddit comment. I don't know. Maybe there is a little bit less of a judgment on Marvel performances because of the context that they're in. But like Elizabeth Olsen in Multiverse of Madness, that is a great horror performance. That is a great action performance. There's just so much fun stuff to dig into with her performance. And that movie is just very fun in general. But I will save my thoughts for what else I watched on that. But this sounds really good. But let's move into another story. Deadline are reporting that Stranger Things star Sadie Sink joins Tom Holland in the next Spider-Man movie. Uh-oh, there it is, everybody. So, okay, let's break this down first of all, because there have been long rumors about the X-Men, how they're going to come into the MCU, and that Sadie Sink has been up for the role of Jean Grey. So, I don't necessarily think that if she were to play Jean Grey, I don't think Jean Grey is like a love interest of Spider-Man or anything like that. I think it would be that she is a young X-Men character or a young mutant that's going to be found by the X-Men now that they're in Spider-Man's universe or coming into the public. As for that theory of her playing Jean Grey, I don't hate it. I think going with extremely young X-Men actors is an interesting choice because, like, think about, I don't know, the Bryan Singer X-Men universe or even the Next Generation where they did like the sort of prequels but not really. Everyone's young in those, but they're not like 21 or 22. They're usually like 25 plus. So that's a good age range, and casting her young, she can play Jean Grey for a few years most definitely. She's also just a fantastic actress. Like watching her in Stranger Things as Max, she's really good in that. So I like her casting choice. If she's not playing Jean Grey, who is she going to play? Some people are being like, oh, she's actually going to be Mary Jane Watson. She's a redhead. I don't know how I feel about that. We don't need a quote unquote, oh, the actual MJ. I think that's a little weird and sort of disrespectful to Zendaya, acting like she was never a real MJ. She was Michelle, but still, she went by MJ, so we got our universe's MJ. Maybe Sadie is going to be playing Gwen Stacy like Bryce Dallas Howard did, like Emma Stone did, putting these redheads as Gwen Stacy. You know, we have a similar trend in every... I love how every Spider-Man franchise kind of has the same thing where Amy Pascal told them, don't date your co-star, then Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst dated, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone dated, Tom Holland, Zendaya dated, then they have to cast, like, you know, a redhead who's going to play Gwen Stacy, so we're kind of just falling into the same thing every trilogy. But I like this casting announcement in general. I think this is a very good pick, and she is a great actress, and I've been wondering how is she going to get into the MCU, because I think she has been long rumored to be joining in various ways. Whether she is playing Jean Grey or Gwen Stacy, I will be happy. If she's playing Mary Jane Watson, I think it is a little bit lame because we already had MJ and we don't need a, oh, now it's the real MJ. Like, what's not real about Zendaya's MJ? It doesn't matter that her name isn't Mary Jane Watson. It's like, she was Michelle, she was MJ, she was that version of MJ for our Peter, so I'm fine with that being as it was. And also, isn't Zendaya also supposed to be in this film? Like, she's supposed to be in Spider-Man 4, so how is that going to kind of work? I think that since, you know, spoilers for No Way Home, I guess, but he had everyone's memory wiped that no one remembers that he is Spider-Man, and I think that was a good place to end on, so I'm hoping that this is going to be a much more ground level Spider-Man movie. We're probably not going to get that. I hope it's like him going to school and then he just remembers his friends and maybe stalks them online or something like that, or runs into them at the Christmas time or some stupid stuff like that. I don't know, just little things like that. If Zendaya's going to be in it, I love Zendaya, but I think she needs to be a very limited role, and same with his friend Ned, played by Jacob Batalon, who actually we're going to talk about today. But I think if they're going to return, it needs to be in a very limited capacity, because I do want us to move on to new characters. As painful as it is for Peter Parker maybe to move on from MJ, of course he's going to have a new love interest, but it would be nice if maybe they had a bit of a romantic spark, but he couldn't commit to a new relationship because he's not over his MJ yet. I don't know, there's a lot of avenues this could go in. I think the Daniel Cretton, what's the director's name? Daniel Cretton or something like that? Destin Daniel Cretton, that's it. Well, he directed Shang-Chi, which I think is a very well-directed film, to be honest. Even if it is a little bit CGI messy towards the end, I think there's a lot of good combat directing, so this could be really fun if we do have X-Men characters showing up, and I'm looking forward to it. But let's move into another story where Scarlett Johansson was sort of talking about fame and fan interactions this week, and that she turned down joining Instagram this week after the studio said, hey, ahead of Jurassic World, could you join Instagram? So I'll read her statement. She said, said, I mean, even today, I got an email from Universal and they're like, hey, would you consider joining Instagram in tandem with the release of Jurassic World Rebirth? She said, I get a lot of pressure to join social media. It does make me think, is there a way where I could do this and stay true to who I am? It didn't feel like I could. The work that I put out there is all based in truth. So I do find it interesting with studios forcing their actors, and especially considering what Maya Hawke said a couple weeks ago, that casting in a lot of projects now is based on social media followers. Like directors and casting agents will literally get tables that have the amount of followers they have total on all of their social medias, and that's sort of how they pick casting sometimes. They don't actually care about talent, and that's just a depressing thought in general. But it is interesting how a huge star like Scarlett Johansson, I mean, Jesus Christ, it's Scarlett Johansson. She is one of the biggest actresses of all time. There's Lost in Translation. She's Black Widow as well. I think that goes without saying. She's one of like the 6 Avengers from the original Avengers movie, but also Lost in Translation, Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit. Just from recent memory, she has been in some massive movies. She doesn't do photos with fans either, which I find really interesting, and I sort of like that. Just because you meet a celebrity doesn't mean it needs to be like, oh, can I capture this moment right away? Like, no, you can just meet them and have that in your memory. So I have so much respect for Scarlett Johansson sort of sticking to her guns and being like, no, I'm not joining social media. I'm not getting into that world. You know, the real world is fucked up enough as it is, and just reading stuff online. What do I have to put out there? I'd rather just stay true to myself and know what I'm doing, know my feelings. I don't need to publish a persona online. So I think Scarlett Johansson is just really cool, and the whole no photos with fans things I think is really commendable as well. Everything her and like Chappell Roan are saying about fame and how fans kind of take ownership of you when you become famous, and just because they enjoy things that you produce, they think they somehow know you or they own you in some way. It's just a very different time with social media now, and how paparazzis are sort of, everyone's a paparazzi in a way with social media. It used to be people just took pictures of you in public were just the paparazzis, but now it's like everyone with Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it may be, everyone with an iPhone or a cell phone in general is sort of a paparazzi in their own way. By sharing it on social media, you're publishing what they're doing and talking about them online, or even just sharing your photo with someone that you're a fan of. And, you know, like Scarlett Johansson says, I don't want to be photographed here in this time with you, because it's not like she's at some grand event. She's like taking her kid to go somewhere or whatever it may be. But anyways, I think what I'm just trying to say is I really don't like this trend of studios casting people based on social media, or casting people and then asking huge stars that already have a massive draw to your movie, hey, could you join social media in tandem? It's like, I don't think that's necessary. People are going to care just as much about Jurassic World Rebirth whether Scarlett Johansson is promoting it on social media or not. Remember, she's been in some big movies. I think she didn't have to promote those, so why should she have to promote this one? All right, moving into another story. Landman breakout Michelle Randolph and Jimmy Tatro have joined the cast of Scream 7. So Spyglass Media, as Deadline is reporting, is continuing to build on its already impressive ensemble. As sources tell Deadline, Michelle Randolph and Jimmy Tatro have joined the cast. So this one comes out February 27th, 2026, so we're less than a year away. Obviously, they're not done filming it yet, or it's not finished yet, but it's not like a big budget, you know, box office, billion-dollar movie, like a Marvel movie, DC movie, Star Wars, whatever, that needs a ton of time and post-production. Like, these are much more straightforward editing things, but if it is going to get into ghosts and ghouls and crazy effects in the afterlife, maybe it'll take longer and there will be more visual effects, but I don't know. It was interesting this week, speaking of Jack Quaid and Scream, because he is a former Ghostface. I think someone asked him, like, oh, what do you think of Scream 7 and all the Ghostface coming back? Does that mean you're coming back? And I don't think he totally shut it down, but I think he just said, like, I have no clue what's going on with that movie. So it is interesting that he didn't say no, but at the same time, I don't think they'll bring back every Ghostface, especially Mikey Madison. I don't think you're going to bring her back. She's now an Oscar winner. She's got better things to do than come back to a dead franchise that's going to produce a weird soft reboot or ignore 2 other movies. I don't know what the hell this franchise is doing anymore, but okay. I want to finish the news on a Hans Zimmer story. So Hans Zimmer was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast with Josh Horowitz. Great podcast if you need something to listen to with great interviews. And he was speaking about the disqualification from the Academy for the Dune Part 2 score, saying it's a stupid rule. He also said, though, you know something? It's not really a sore point. It's just such a stupid point. How can it be a sore point? I got disqualified because I was using material from the first movie in the second movie, but it's not a sequel. It is the completion. Both movies are one arc. So was I supposed to go and take all the character themes away and write new character themes and develop them. It's just a stupid rule. What I didn't want to do is go and bitch about it. I will say that him and Denis Villeneuve were very respectful during the award season. I mean, I think Denis Villeneuve spoke publicly about it, saying that he thinks it's a dumb rule, but he understands, but at the same time, he's going to fight back, and it's not, it's not done. And unfortunately, they couldn't fight back enough that Hans Zimmer could be nominated, because I think he would have had a very good chance. But at the same time, I do want to take a moment to bitch about this, because it's true. The movies are called Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. They're not Dune 1 and Dune 2. Dune 2 is not a sequel. It's a continuation, and the first two movies are like one story going over each other, so you can't just throw everything out. So I think the Academy sort of unnecessarily fell into their rules and didn't quite think it through. But having said that, I have a lot of respect for Hans Zimmer and Denis Villeneuve not constantly pulling on and being like, oh, well, Hans Zimmer, he didn't get nominated, and just like constantly, I don't know, in every interview, they were still doing tons of press for the movie leading up to the Oscars. And even though Hans Zimmer was disqualified, they weren't bringing it up in every interview. And every time they were asked about it, they were very respectful. And this Happy, Sad, Confused interview was after the Oscars, before, because I think Hans Zimmer is going on tour soon, or maybe there's a recorded version going on YouTube or like streaming or something like that, Hans Zimmer Live, which I'll definitely check because I love Hans Zimmer. He's probably my favorite composer. If it was Dune Messiah and it's an actual sequel, it's a completely different story, and he used all the same stuff, then I could understand, okay, yeah, you can't really do that because it is a different movie. But this is one little nitpick I would have about the Oscars, is that Conan and everyone that spoke about it were calling it Dune 2 a lot of the time when it's Dune Part 2. They should have made that distinction, because I think it is a very clear thing that this is a continuation of another movie, which the first movie was nominated for a shitload of Oscars, and both of them, Denis Villeneuve did not get nominated for Best Director, which was bullshit. But we're past award seasons now, it's got to be, bygones have to be bygones. I think Honora was a great winner, The Brutalist great winner, Conclave great winner, everyone that won was fine. Emilia Perez, whatever, you got your 2 wins, but guys, we need to move on. It's time for 2025. We're starting the Robert Pattinson Oscar campaign now. It begins today, because he needs to win Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor for Mickey 17 and Mickey 18. But before all that, we need to address the now, and the now is Novocaine. Remember, timestamps below if you only want to listen to the non-spoiler section, and then go to what else I watched, because I have lots of stuff to talk about there. But let's do it. Let's get into Novocaine. Novocaine is a 2025 action thriller movie coming in at an hour and 50 minutes, so a nice tight runtime. It is directed by Dan Burke and Robert Olson, written by Lars Jacobson. I've never seen any of Dan Burke or Robert Olson's work. Budget was $18 million. Reviews are mostly positive. It's 81% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 87% popcornometer, which I just checked this morning and it's the same. 7.1 on IMDb, 61% on Metacritic, 3.3 Letterboxd average, with 3.5 stars being the mode rating. So I would say a largely positive reviews. And I was a little worried because some people that I follow in the film Twitter sphere saw early screenings and said, oh, this is really bad. But then they had the premiere and it was just glowing reviews of people saying how much fun it was, how good Jack Quaid is. So I was very confused and sort of skeptical going into my screening, like, wait, is this going to be good or awful? And the Rotten Tomato scores, I was like, okay, so like people mostly like this. But the synopsis for Novocaine: when the girl of his dreams is kidnapped, everyman Nate turns his inability to feel pain into an unexpected strength in his fight to get her back. The film stars Jack Quaid as Nathan Cain, of course, aka Novocaine, Amber Midthunder as Sherry, Ray Nicholson as Simon, Jacob Batalon as Roscoe, Betty Gabriel and Matt Walsh as two cops who don't really have their character names anywhere. Apparently it's Mincy and Coltrane, Evan Hankst as Ben, and Conrad Kemp as Andre. Alright, my initial thoughts on Novocaine. This is a very flawed, tired concept that is extremely unoriginal. I feel like we've seen it 100 times now, but I have to say, I had a lot of fun watching this. It's stupid, it's really funny, and Jack Quaid is just so damn good in this. I want to get into the performances right away. As we know, Jack Quaid is Nathan Cain. I think without Jack Quaid as Nathan Cain, the movie is a lot less enjoyable because there's just something about Jack Quaid Quaid, he's so damn charming. He's so funny. He has amazing comedic timing. He really does sell it as an everyman. It's so weird because he's literally Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's kid, but there's something about him that's just so normal, and I think that's why he's so good as Huey in The Boys. There's something about him that he just plays a normal dude so well, and I just find him so relatable and likable, and I'm cheering for him at every point. He really sells it as this bubble-wrapped antisocial loser that's in over his head. He's good throughout the whole movie, and he really brings a legitimacy to the role that I enjoyed, and I loved him a lot. I believed he was a bank manager. Then we have Amber Midthunder as Sherry. I think she's okay. She has a bit of a weird role that I don't want to talk about until we get to spoilers, or I don't really want to divulge. It really detracts from her possibilities that she could go with this performance. But her and Jack Quaid have very good chemistry. I really like them as a pair in this film. Then we have Ray Nicholson as Simon. He's pretty fun. This is literally a battle of the Nepo babies between Jack Nicholson's kid and Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's kid. I haven't seen Ray Nicholson in anything because I didn't see Smile 2, but I have to say he's pretty good in this, and God, he really looks like his dad. It's just super freaky, and unlike Jack Quaid, who I think some moments there's times where he looks like Dennis Quaid, he never really looks like Meg Ryan to me, I would say, but he always does carry a bit of Dennis Quaid in him. But Ray Nicholson, it's terrifying how much he looks like a young Jack Nicholson, but he's really hamming it up in this and committing to it, which I appreciated. It felt very old school action villain from like when I was a kid. Then we have the CEO of sex, as he's known on the internet, Jacob Batalon as Roscoe. I will give him credit because he's really funny in this. I think when he shows up, there's a lot of really great laughs. There's a lot of really great quips, and him and Jack Quaid actually have a really good dynamic, and their character's friendship is a lot of fun, and it brings a bit of heart to the film as well, which I really appreciated. Then we have Betty Gabriel as Officer Langstrom. Holy shit, I did not recognize her at first, but she is the house servant, what's her name, in Get Out. The one that like has the tears strolling down her face. That's the first thing I saw her in, and Get Out's one of my favorite movies. I did not recognize her until halfway through. She made like a certain face, and I was like, that's the scary lady from Get Out. But she's really good in this as well. She has some funny moments. She's good. She brings a lot of curiosity to the role. As for Matt Walsh as Officer Duffy, Mike McClintock, oh my god, I'm a huge Veep fan, so seeing him in this was just really funny, and he's hilarious in this too. There's one joke that I'll give away where he says, oh man, this is a bad day to quit drinking. She's like, wow, you quit drinking? Good for you. He's like, no, I'm just saying it would be a bad day. And my theater really erupted in laughter. Mine, it wasn't fully sold out last night, but it was a decent turnout. We saw it in Laser Ultra. My group, I'm acting like the audience. We are a collective. I saw it in Laser Ultra, and there happened to be other people there, but saw it in Laser Ultra, which I think is still being reformed. It's a weird format. But anyways, Mike McClintock, it's fun that he's in this, and overall the cast is pretty decent. There's lots of fun players in here, and it's really a battle of the Nepo babies. But let's get into the story. As I said, the story, very tired. I think we've had enough of the regular guy gets looped into the world of action. I mean, we've gotten 2 in the last 2 months. Like, there's tons of examples of, oh my god, he's just an average family man, or he's a bank manager, or he works at a bakery, or he works at whatever it is, and now he needs to become this action hero. We've seen it so many times with movies like Nobody, or Love Hurts, of course, was literally a month ago, and his past is coming back to get him, or he just is a normal dude that needs to become an action hero. I googled movies where normal guy becomes action hero, and there were some fun examples that came up, like Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. I would disagree. He's in the military, at least, even if he's not a full-on soldier. He's like a logistics dude who has to go into battle, but he's still in the military. And there's another one coming out, The Amateur, with Rami Malek, that's coming out in April, where he's like a computer hacker dude for the CIA, but then he goes into the field to avenge his wife's death, played by Rachel Brosnahan. And I was like, oh my god, we're getting 3 within the space of 3 months. Every month we're getting a normal guy needs to do action movie, and I'm a little sick of it. I think we need to take a 20-minute break from making these movies, and like the John Wick thing of like, normal guy comes back to action, and the John Wick producers as well need a break. But like I said with Love Hurts, guys, the story's not original anymore. I think the ship has sailed, and we do need to find something else to start milking. But as for the directing from Dan Burke and Robert Olson, I think they did okay with this. The action is pretty fun, and I think they really step it up in a few places that makes it an enjoyable experience. Like, there's one part that was so gross and over the top that someone audibly just went, oh shit, shit in my theater, and it was hilarious. Everyone burst out laughing, and the one dude was just so viscerally disgusted at this one part. So I think it's well directed. It's got a lot of heart to it, and even if the story doesn't totally bring the power or bring the magic, the directing brings a lot of charm to this, that the action is always fun and it never feels like a one-trick pony that, oh yeah, he doesn't feel pain. But I will bring up some stuff about the powers because I think we should get into that. They constantly push it, and they're trying to have exciting shots, which I appreciated. So I would love to see them doing, I don't know, someone on Reddit or Letterboxd said, oh, get these guys doing the Invincible movie, because there is a live action version of Invincible coming out, allegedly. And I could see that. They have this guy that like doesn't feel pain or whatever, and he's a superhero. But at the same time, we've had movies with superheroes that don't feel pain, like Kick-Ass or whatever. Crank with Jason Statham, is that it? And actually, okay, I'll get into his powers right now. So he feels nothing. Like, he feels no pain. He can feel pleasure and like pressure in certain ways, but he doesn't feel any pain. But he can still be knocked out. Like, he gets knocked out during the bank robbery, so he just needs adrenaline shots all the time, because when he gets injured, like, gets blood loss, and the adrenaline is what keeps him alive. I didn't really understand the whole adrenaline shot thing. There is a few interesting things about him as a character with this power, and apparently it is a real like disorder that you don't feel pain because of your nerve endings. So he can't eat solid foods because he's at risk of biting off his tongue. He's never had pie, and that's a major story point in this. Also his bladder, because he can't feel his bladder hurting and that he needs to pee, which is interesting because I think you would feel pressure in your gut, but apparently he just doesn't feel any of that. He has to set a timer on his watch for every 3 hours to go pee, which is kind of funny, but also he doesn't heal any faster or anything like that. He's not Wolverine like Jacob, what's his name, Batalon says in the trailer, which is actually cut from the movie. You're not Wolverine, so he doesn't heal. He doesn't feel it, but he still gets hurt like a normal person, and he doesn't regenerate at any better rate. There's a lot of interesting stuff with his power, and I think they do a mostly okay job explaining it, but I just didn't understand the adrenaline shots that he needs. As for the writing of the actual story itself, the screenplay is mostly okay, but the final act really gets weird. And like, the pacing wise and writing wise, the first 30 minutes are kind of the opening chunk of the movie is really fun because it's genuinely just a rom-com, and I'm a sucker for a Jack Quaid rom-com. Everybody go watch Plus One with Jack Quaid and Maya Erskine. It is so charming. I loved it so much. But the whole first 30 minutes of this movie almost feels like a separate TV episode or another movie where we're experiencing a really fun and cute rom-com that's laying some great foundations chemistry-wise. Then it's this fun adventure that we're flying through for a lot of the movie that's about, guy get back girl, and I enjoy it all. But then at the end of the movie, it kind of just keeps going. And where I literally thought credits are about to roll, or I thought like, oh, here's the big swing. This is the final thing. And there was another 20 minutes of the movie. I'm not even joking. It was like 4 more scenes. And I was like, what the hell are we doing here? I thought the movie was over. It keeps going. So I don't know. The writing is a little bit interesting in some parts where I'm like, that doesn't feel like a good choice for this, or that doesn't really make any sense. Like, there's one part where he's trying to locate where one of the bad guys lives. So he gets his friend to look at this photo of a tattoo and send it to all the local tattoo parlors and be like, hey, who did this? But it's while he's driving, and it's like, where are you driving right now, Jack Quaid? There was just, I don't know what I'm saying, but there was a lot of steps within this movie where it doesn't really make sense in the moment, and you're like, what are we doing here? And there's a lot of questions about the story progression, but sort of makes sense later. Like, there's a lot of moments where I'm just like, I mean, I guess, sure. However, I want to talk about the gore, because they go hard on the gore, and I gotta hand it to them. The makeup and the effects are really wonderful and really fun in this movie. The snapping bones, the blood, the skin burns, all the disgusting things that happen to Jack Quaid and things that he does. I was actually impressed. Like, I was seriously impressed and felt that there was a level of quality to this movie that I appreciated a lot. Unlike Love Hurts, where some of the gore was okay, but it felt a little fake and sort of nothing, or like just weightless. In this, every gory thing, there was a reaction in my crowd of like, oh my god, like people were getting uncomfortable watching the movie, and that's a fun thing to experience. But also, every time something happens to Jack Quaid, it's something that's super disgusting, and it's a level of comedy to it that every time he's not feeling anything, but everyone in the crowd was reacting like, oh shit, he gets like a bullet through the arm, or he gets stabbed in the back or something, there's an arrow in his leg, it. Everyone is disgusted in the audience, and it was really fun to experience that, of how many people were actually just gasping, and it never looks cheap, but there's a level of hilariousness to it. I really enjoyed that, and it never felt stale in the film, which is nice. But okay, I want to get into some other things that kind of bothered me about this. The movie takes place at Christmas. I don't understand that. And I was like, it's March. We just had the Christmas period 3 months ago where this would be a fun time to release this movie because it's a Christmas film. And I was like, is this delayed? I Googled it. The release was always going to be March of 2025. I don't really get that. And I did feel a kind of a weird reaction of like, oh, Merry Christmas. I was like, it's such odd timing. And I think that's just one of the lazy details about this movie that I felt were like, okay, I guess. Like, why is the Christmas period constantly brought up in this film? Or why did they pick to set it at Christmas time when they knew it was going to come out in March 2025? I would have scrapped all of that. Like, it would have been way more fun if they put it at another time, or if they released it at Christmas time in general. There's also, Jack Quaid's character has tattoos in this film that he's been giving himself over the years because he's like this antisocial dude who was wrapped in a bubble for most of his life. And this is gonna sound mean, but the tattoos are the ugliest fucking tattoos I have seen in my life. Like, his whole body, or his waist up on his arms, are all a medieval castle, and there's like all these different knights, and it's a story of his life or whatever so far. This is really depressing, but there was genuinely a laughing reaction when he unveils his tattoos to Sherry at the start of the movie when they're dating, or when they're on a date, and people started laughing in my auditorium. So then I started laughing because I was like, okay, good, yeah, those are ugly tattoos. And look, I have tattoos. I'm sure people behind my back have called my tattoos ugly, but it looks like they were drawn on by a child. It makes sense that he did them himself because they are fugly. So I hated the tattoo plot, which actually goes somewhere, but it's just, that was a really odd choice. And same with the music, I thought was really strange. And I think we're in a bit of an epidemic when it comes to soundtracks of just constant needle drops. And it's so exhausting. The first 2/3 of this movie, it felt like someone just plugged in their Spotify, and it feels like music composing for films are kind of getting lazy in some ways, where they're like, whatever, just go on the TikTok trendings page and just play whatever's popular right now, or just play like typical 80s romance song at the opening credits or stuff. I get it. In certain moments, it's fun to have a needle drop, but for the whole first 2/3 of this movie, I was like, have we gotten any actual real composed or written music in this film by the composers? Not really. It's allegedly Lorne Balfe and Andrew Kozinski who are the composers of this film, according to Letterboxd. You don't really feel that a lot of the film. It's just like, popular song from 2010, popular song from last year, popular song from TikTok right now, and it takes you out of it a little bit because it's just like, needle drop. Every scene for the first, hour is just, every scene has its own needle drop, whether the music is in the story or outside of the story. It's just like, it feels a bit lazy to me. And okay, a couple more story problems I want to get into before we get into spoilers, but the third act, it feels like we sort of lose sight of our hero a little bit and his powers. I think plot armor maybe comes into play a little bit too much for other characters, so it's kind of uncertain who has the Novocaine powers at that point. Like, and no, they don't. They end up getting very injured as well, but it was just a little bit where the script is coming into play, and it's like, no, we need our characters to keep living, and I didn't quite like that, and I felt like Jack Quaid was sort of losing focus at the last third, as well as the last third of the movie. Just, there's too many twists. Oh my god, every scene is like plot twist, and it just keeps going. And like I said, I thought the movie was ending. There was a whole other 20 minutes with multiple scenes, and I was like, Jesus Christ, how long is this going on for? It's an hour and 50-minute movie. You could have cut 20 minutes off this, and I think it would have been a perfectly fine film. Just a very strange choice, and the pacing is very odd for the final third. And one of the twists is revealed really early in the movie, and then it's revealed again later in the movie. They play it like we hadn't heard it earlier in the film. So I was like, yeah, I know, you told us an hour ago, and they expect this huge reaction from one character. I was like, I get that he doesn't know, but we know. But overall, I think I'm going to wrap up non-spoilers there. So overall, my thoughts on Novocaine. I still think Novocaine was a really fun time at the movies. Is it a good movie? Maybe not. I think it's pretty flawed, but it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun time. It's a popcorn movie. Would I watch it again? Maybe. Just for the great performance from Jack Quaid that I really enjoyed. It's not original, not even a little bit, but hopefully it's the last of its kind. I give Novocaine a 3 out of 5 stars, and let's move into spoilers. All right, spoilers for Novocaine. You have been warned. So I want to start with, I guess I could have said this in non-spoilers, but a lot of the big moments were shown in the trailer. Did I say that in non-spoilers? But I want to start with that because I hate movies where they're showing every big story beat, like the booby-trapped house or the whole bank robbery as well, kind of, everything with that, or the fight in the kitchen or whatever it is. I think they do a good job. I will give them credit. They do a good job of hiding the big twist that Sherry is actually involved with this heist, and they do a good job hiding the whole kind of third act in some ways, but at the same time, until you get to the third act, it feels like a lot of big moments are shown in the trailer. So this is a movie that you're sort of hoping people went into blind and just went out on a limb to buy a ticket, because the marketing lets it down and they just over marketed this film like crazy, and that just really gets on my nerves. I think the Jacob Batalon part showing up where Roscoe shows up to the house and helps him. We see that in the trailer. We see the part where he's getting tortured in the trailer, the deep fryer gun in the trailer, the cops chasing him part of the trailer. It's all too much. It's all too much, guys. I can't. It's all too much. But I think they definitely cut a lot from this film because his friend Roscoe, I don't even remember this being in the trailer, but his friend Roscoe tells him like, dude, you got to be careful. You're not Wolverine. And then you see the big shot of him punching the glass, which is also in the trailer. So they cut that out of the movie of him saying you're not Wolverine, which I think is an important part to highlight, that he doesn't have regenerative powers like Wolverine. It's just that he doesn't feel pain, but you can still bleed out or get shot in the head and you're gonna die, which is weird that nobody ever shoots him in the head or just shoots him in the heart right away. Like, if this dude's just constantly coming after you, and it's very clear that these bank robbers have no problem with killing people, considering they kill like 15 people at the start of the bank heist, like with the cops and the bank manager. A lot of people die in this movie, and we'll get into that in a second as well, but it's an odd choice. But also with his friend Roscoe, we're going to stick with that for a second. A lot of the big story beats are revolving Roscoe narrating the trailer or him showing up to the house, and a lot of the trailer is that, and that's a big part of this movie as well. I will say that I liked the whole Roscoe friendship, the fact that they are just online, you know, they're gaming friends, and I thought they were playing Baldur's Gate for a second. I was like, yo, let's go, but they're not, and they've never met in real life because Nathan lives a very antisocial life where he just goes to work, comes home, doesn't go anywhere because he's scared he's going to bite his tongue off or he's going to get hurt or whatever it may be, and he's not going to feel it or his bladder will explode, whatever it might be. I liked them meeting in person, and Roscoe has clearly been lying about his whole life to him, saying he drives a Harley, he's 6'5", he looks like Jason Momoa. A lot of that, when it's revealed, is just very funny, and there's a lot of comedy that comes from that situation. Now, let's get into the deaths, because Jesus Christ, a lot of people die in this movie, and it was a little bit jarring at the end that Matt Walsh gets shot in the neck, and then Simon shoots also the other cop, Officer Langstrom. He shoots her in the hip, so she shows up with a cane at the end when she survives. But I was just like, Jesus Christ, Simon, take it easy. And the writers really just had no remorse for pretty much anyone in this story, that anybody could die and they didn't really care. Like Jack Quaid's character, he kills 2 of the robbers, I guess 3 of the robbers, but it just felt very jarring at the end of the movie and this is when I thought the movie was about to end. Simon gets shot in the chest. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Credits are gonna roll. He's gonna talk to Sherry and been like, I can't believe you were in on all of this. How could you do this? And then I thought he was gonna not be in love with her anymore. Then Simon pulls out a gun and just shoots Officer Coltrane and shoots his partner in the hip. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, everybody's dying in this movie, and it's a bit much, and it's a little bit jarring, and felt like, okay, no, don't keep going. Please stop the movie. And that's where I think a lot of the odd choices in the screenplay show up, and a lot of my problems with the movie were the final act. If the final act wrapped up when it should have, this movie score would have been a lot higher than 3 out of 5 stars, because I feel like, okay, you know what? That was nice and self-contained. It knew when the bleeding needed to stop, but the bleeding just kept going. And I already talked about the adrenaline shot in non-spoilers, but I don't fully understand why he needs the adrenaline shots over and over again. He goes to the shop, like Earl's shop, that he said, you know what, I'm gonna help you keep your money because you lost your wife and I don't want them to foreclose on your house. So he goes, and I like that moment. That was a good character building moment for Nathan, I think, to show he truly is a good guy. At no point in the movie am I thinking Nathan's not a good guy, so at least they're writing their hero in a very good way. I have to give the writers credit. At all points, I was rooting for Jack Quaid and Nathan. I was never like, oh god, he's turning into an asshole. But I want to get into the big twist that they reveal twice. So Sherry grows up in the foster program. I don't know if she was lying about that. I don't think she is lying, but Simon, the bank robber, Jack Nicholson's son, Ray Nicholson, is her brother. So they both grew up in the foster program, and she was in on the bank heist and helped them plan everything. So I guess she was going to get some money and they were going to all escape together, and she was going to be taken hostage no matter what. I don't really love that twist because it sort of detracts from the quality of Sherry as a person, and I sort of stopped caring. I was like, I don't really care if they save her because she's in on this. She has helped a bank robbery happen. You're kind of taken away from our relationship here, writers. But they reveal it, I want to say maybe in one of the first scenes, where after she's taken hostage and Simon and the other guy go back to the mechanic shop where they work, I guess, and that's where they've been planning and scheming their heist. And I thought the reveal was so weird, like, oh, this is really early in the movie that we're finding out she's in on it. Now I don't really care about whether Nathan succeeds. But then later in the movie, obviously Nathan doesn't know. So when I thought the movie was coming to an end, he shows up to save the day at the big final act, and he gets to the mechanic shop and he pulls a gun on Simon, and then this big reveal, oh, well, she was in on it. She didn't tell you or whatever. And they do this big zoom in on Jack Quaid's character, Nathan, and it's sort of played in a way that you would think in another movie, oh, wow, none of us in the audience even knew. It was just a really odd choice. It almost felt like a double reveal, and I think it took a lot of people out of the movie, and I've seen other people talk about it online of like, what was up with that? Like, was that a reshoot or an insert or a weird story part where the writer forgot, like, oh yeah, the audience already knows that. And they put so much time and effort into Nathan finding out, and I almost wish if you're gonna have that reveal twice in the film, I think you need to really delay the first one. Like, just before Nathan shows up, you have little hints or something like that. You just start hinting at it that maybe they know each other or something like that, or I don't know. I just think having Sherry be in on it is something that you need to only reveal once, and it needs to be when Nathan is in the room. It's weird. Again, that's part of this movie just being extremely flawed. It's such a strange story choice that I don't even know how I can work through it or rationalize it. Maybe you have her just like duct taped her mouth the entire movie until Nathan shows up, and then Simon takes it off of her, and the big reveal happens, and then it's like, oh shit, that is a big twist, and now I don't care about Sherry. But instead, most of the movie, I don't really care about Sherry, and I was like, all right, well, I don't really care if Nathan succeeds here, and that's where, I don't know, the fun of the movie only comes from all the violence. All right, I want to get into the literal ending of the movie, because the ending just has some crazy steps that show Nathan is kind of an insane person. In his final breath, after he's, saved the girl, she's killed her brother, Simon has snapped his arm, which is just such a disgusting point where that one guy in my theater said, oh shit, he says I love you in his final breath to Sherry, or quote unquote final breath, because he just wakes up 10 minutes later. I thought that was such a strange story choice. Like, you've gone on one date, yeah, you guys slept together, you guys have gone out once to an art show, and you've gone through all this to save her. She's still a bank robber or a conspirator in some ways. I don't think you needed the I love you in there, and it was like, pump the brakes, my man, you're kind of crazy. And then he stays with Sherry after all of this. She has lied to you for 4 months and been planning a bank heist, and then he ends up visiting her in prison, and they stay in love. And I was like, what is redeemable about this? Why are you still in love with a bank robber? It's such a weird ending that I think really crumbles and sort of takes away from the entire movie. The script is very flawed for this movie, and like I said at the very start, Jack Quaid is really saving a lot of this movie with how likable he is and how much fun the concept is, and the fact that they keep it from being a one-trick pony movie. But it's such a strange ending, and then in the ending, he gets her tattooed onto his body as like the quote-unquote damsel in distress, but it's not, because she's also helping the knight get into the castle. So she's like, whatever, Sleeping Beauty in the castle, or Rapunzel or whatever, and she's helping him up. So he's like, I got you tattooed on my chest because you also helped me. And it, again, the tattoo looks awful, and everyone started laughing in my theater. I was like, I don't think this is a joke. It's a very odd choice, but it's a weird final shot where he's chewing pie, and I thought, oh, this is a great moment to have him bite off his tongue and end on a laugh. They just don't. He just enjoys the pie. It's so strange. I think there's a lot in this movie that just does not work, and there's so many weird script choices that I could go on about, and it's all really weird. I don't know, guys. It's gonna be a hit on streaming, in my opinion. I think this is gonna do very well on Paramount Plus. Look, Novocaine, is it as bad as I thought it was going to be? No, I was delightfully surprised with how much fun I had, but at the same time, the script is kind of stupid and makes a lot of really weird choices in the last 30 minutes that I thought, please God, just put a bullet in my head because I want this to end. But let's move into what else I watched. All right, what else I watched? I got a juicy one for you guys this week. So I watched 8 movies, 5 TV shows, read 2 books, or 1.5 because I'm actually finishing the second book, and I really got stuck into a game. So I'm going to start with the game, Baldur's Gate 3. My friends and I started a campaign last weekend. We played one with the 4 of us and then one with 3 of us. It's so freaking fun, guys. I love Baldur's Gate. It's such an inventive game where it feels like there's a billion choices almost at every turn. With the 4 of us, we ended underneath the goblin camp and we were like fighting to get through this mirror. And then with the 3 of us, we ended at the goblin camp. So like almost a similar point, but at different levels, I guess, something like that. But Baldur's Gate 3 is very fun. If you're someone that likes Dungeons and Dragons and you don't have it on PS5, or I don't know what other platforms it's on. It's probably on PC, right? But it's a really fun game. And now I'm going to get into books. I read Civil War, as you would know from my social medias. I talked about it on a social media. An interesting comic. A few years ago, I really liked it. And now having read it as an adult, because I think I read it when I was 15 or 16 when Captain America Civil War was coming out. And I was like, oh, okay, that was fun. But now reading it as an adult, I still like it. But a lot of the choices emotionally in the story and a lot of the character arcs don't really make sense. Like Reed Richards just kind of goes nuts in the story, and the story progression doesn't really make sense. It just feels like every issue is some big as possible battle where everyone's just being thrown at each other and people are like dying or whatever it is. And I still like it. I think it's pretty good. And then I started reading Iron Man, Mask in the Iron Man. I'm not fully finished it, but I'm having a lot of fun doing the comics video. I think at some point, maybe on YouTube, when I get to like part 20, I might do a little video talking about the 20 books that I've read so far, because at the same time, 6 of them were in one series, so it's not like it would be an hour-long video. I think that would be fun to do like a bit of a roundup of like every comic that I've read so far in this series, or I'll make a TikTok or something like that ranking them. But let's move into TV shows next, and then we're going to end strong on all the movies. Invincible season 3 wrapped up this week. I thought it was just as strong as season 1, and I absolutely loved this season and the emotional turmoil that they put Mark through. I thought the finale was fantastic. Dear God, season 3 was just so much fun, and we talked about season 2 last year on the show, and I do want to go back and watch the whole series because I think season 2 was good, but maybe because of the mid-season break and the huge gap, I stopped caring, so my impression of it went down a bit. But season 3 I liked a lot, and it felt very akin to season 1, where Mark is on a journey of discovery and figuring out who he can trust and his role in this system, how he's trying to be different from Nolan, but he keeps getting closer and closer. Then at the same time, he has his brother Oliver who wants to be Omniboy, and they're like, yeah, you can't be Omniboy. People will hate you. I just thought season 3 had a lot of great writing, and I'm very much looking forward to season 4, which I think Robert Kirkman said is going to come out early next year. They're trying to do one a year. As for the animation, I never really had an issue with the animation. I get that people would nitpick because season 1, the animation's just impeccable, like just absolutely gorgeous. But this is like, dude, you ever watch Batman the Animated Series? Some of the animation in that today would be called terrible. Then we move into White Lotus season 3, episode 4, Hide or Seek. Things are really ramping up, and I just don't understand how people get say, oh, season 3 is so boring, nothing's happening. The whole Timothy storyline and stuff like that, if you don't want any White Lotus spoilers, skip ahead like 45 seconds. I'm just going to chat about it quickly. The whole Timothy thing, I put out a theories video, which was a lot of fun on Wednesday on all my socials, and I think Timothy is so close to just throwing Saxon under the bus. I think that's where that storyline is going to end up, and just so much good writing. I'm excited to see what happens with Rick and Greg. I think Mike White has done something amazing bringing back Greg and the choices that he's having with Greg and Belinda, running into each other at the resort constantly. But let's move into Survivor season 48, episode 3, because it was a historic episode this week where we had a deadlock vote. So Justin loses his vote. Mary successfully played a shot in the dark, which was amazing. My winner pick remains, but she plays a shot in the dark successfully, and that was so much fun. What I don't get, I think the show was very confused about the rules and maybe should have gone to a fire making challenge between Justin and Say, because we kept getting ties between Justin, Say, every vote, or Mary, and it did not count because Justin didn't tell everyone that he doesn't even have a vote. And it was a very weird tribal council, and it felt like the producers maybe dropped the ball a bit, but it was still so entertaining. And even tribal council wasn't the only entertaining part of the episode. Like, we get David's confessional at the start of the episode where he says he lives in a trailer in his dad's front yard. His wife wants to be a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids, and he's a stunt performer in Hollywood, and they live in a trailer, and it sounds like she sort of refuses to work, and he sort of says that if I don't win this, she's gonna leave me. That's one of the crazier confessionals we've had in the last few years of Survivor. That felt like old school Survivor, where people were like, yeah, I'm like bankrupt back home, or whatever. It's sort of jarring to see like, oh yeah, my wife's gonna leave me if I don't win this show. Like, that's kind of a crazy story, and now I feel bad for David. Like, dude, your girlfriend or your wife or whatever the relationship is sounds a little crazy. The fact that she's refusing to work is a little nuts. Like, you think $1 million is gonna keep 4 babies going for the rest of your life? So I sort of felt a little bit bad for David in that moment, and I think a lot of his friends are probably like, you need to leave her. It's gonna be hilarious if they watch that episode together, that she sounds like a real villain on TV. But anyways, it was a great episode. I think the dice game was really stupid though, and Justin kind of got fucked over. But let's move into Severance Season 2, Episode 9. The last time we're going to talk about an individual episode, because next week is the finale, and next week's episode is all going to be Severance Season 2. We're going to break it down. We're going to do non-spoilers, spoilers. In the spoilers section, I'm actually going to have just a list of theories that I'm going to find online of what people think is going to happen after Season 2. Next week's going to be a lot of fun, guys, so catch up on Severance before then. But this week, the After Hours. What a crazy episode. Dylan just quits. Both his innie and his outie want to quit, and I think that shows there's a lot of overlapping feelings between your innie and your outie, and his wife is just, oh man, I feel bad for her, because it's like she's falling in love with just another version of her husband, or is she? But that was just a very interesting story choice. And same with Irving and Bert. Irving clearly loves Bert in real life as well, and there's some kind of overlap of feelings. I think what this episode really proved is that love and attraction can transcend the Severance program, and maybe there is soulmates in our life. Maybe that's what they're trying to argue, is that soulmates is like a universal thing. But then at the same time, you have Mark, who's in love with Helly and in love with Gemma, and I loved as well the Cobell, Mark and his sister. I really liked what they did with that, and I think episode 9 just really set up what's going to be an insane finale, a 76-minute finale. That's going to be a nice juicy one for us to talk about next week, but we're going to talk about the whole season. Let's move into movies, however, because I watched 8 movies, 5 of them being Marvel movies, for my March YouTube video. I started with Thor: The Dark World. I've only seen it once before, twice before, maybe once before. My goal is I was kind of trying to go back and watch all of the Marvel movies that I've only seen once. For the most part, I haven't rewatched Guardians 3 or the Marvels. I think I might try and squeeze those in before I film my video. At least Guardians 3. I don't really care if I watch the Marvels again, but I rewatched Thor: The Dark World. Avengers Age of Ultron, I've seen a bunch of times, but it was just I haven't rewatched it recently, so I wanted a refresher. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So let's start with Thor: The Dark World. I think it's not as terrible as I remember. Where a lot of my enjoyment of that movie comes from, though, is the Loki stuff and him and his mother's relationship, and kind of him being like, oh, I'm not your kid, but then he's sad when she dies. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of weird script choices, and the editing of that film is very strange, and the whole supernatural element of like that other world where the gem is really boring. I also think Chris Hemsworth is a lot better as Thor in that. I still think, Thor Ragnarok is easily the best Thor movie by far. There's really only been one good Thor movie. I think the first Thor movie it's okay. Thor: The Dark World, not that great. Thor: Love and Thunder, pretty bad. So Thor: The Dark World, I gave 2 stars. Age of Ultron, mixed feelings. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in it, like James Spader is good, but there's a lot of weird story choices like the romance, and I'm not going to talk too much about all these Marvel movies because I am going to talk about them in my March YouTube video, so stay tuned for that. Age of Ultron, I gave 3.5 stars. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I was shocked how much I enjoyed it. Hilarious. It's genuinely just a good comedy. If this was outside of the Marvel universe, I think it actually would have been so much more like universally loved, but because it's under the Marvel banner, people are scared to enjoy it because they're like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm not a film bro or whatever. I gave it 3.5 stars as well, like Age of Ultron. I think Paul Rudd is just so funny in it, and there's so many good story beats. Going back to it, I was kind of dreading it, and then I watched it and I was like, I'm having so much fun watching this. Then the last 2 were Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Still really solid. I think my opinion's not really unchanged from the first time I watched it. 3.5 stars. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, emotionally charged, a super almost difficult movie to get through because of how real it is, and you can feel like a dark cloud of grief hanging over the film. And it's just, I loved Chadwick Boseman, and I I genuinely remember the exact moment I read that he passed away, and he had been battling cancer for the past 4 years or something like that. I was at work at McDonald's. I was closing. It was like a Friday night, I think. It was getting close to midnight, and I just checked my phone, and I was about to be off, and it was like, Chadwick Boseman has passed away today. And I literally, for a second, my brain just shut down, like, what the hell? And I was so confused. Like, it just did not seem real to me because he was just so universally loved. But there was a lot of people like, oh, with Infinity War and Endgame, he looked a lot skinnier. And there were people in a really disturbing way theorizing about his health, but maybe the signs were there that like, oh, something might not be okay with him, but that at the same time, we should respect his, privacy. But I really miss Chadwick Boseman, and Wakanda Forever is just such a great send-off, even if I think the movie definitely has flaws. Namor is a great villain, though. Namor, just a phenomenal villain. But let's get into 3 movies that I want to talk about outside of the Marvel Universe. I'm currently working my way through Variety's top 100 movies of all time. This week, I watched Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, a Pedro Almodovar film from 1988. I might be pronouncing his last name wrong, but it's a comedy. It is so damn funny. It has Antonio Banderas. Like, it's a very, I don't know, it's just a very enjoyable film, and it's so fun seeing Antonio Banderas in this film as well, but also just all of the women in the cast are complete knockouts. It's such an enjoyable time. I gave it 4 stars. If you're someone that enjoys foreign films as well, I would recommend it. Then I resaw Mickey 17 on Tuesday night in IMAX. So much fun. My opinion is unchanged. If anything changed, I actually enjoyed the third act a little bit more, maybe just because I knew what was coming. But I think Mickey 17 is a certified banger. I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this just as much the second time. Robert Pattinson, he's amazing in it. Mark Ruffalo, amazing. Toni Collette in it, amazing. Naomi Ackie, so damn good. I think I'm really enjoying how much people are loving Naomi Akkie's performance as well, because it is just such a romantic movie. I think that's what really hit me the second time, is how romantic the story is and how much love there is between Robert Pattinson and Naomi Ackie, and how good their chemistry is as the Mickeys and Nasha. And all the jokes hit just as hard the second time for me. I was actually in a very busy Tuesday night screening where I hope maybe the momentum can go and this movie can make some money, but I don't think it will. I think it's probably gonna end up under 100 million, which is just depressing to say because it's a Bong Joon-ho film. Maybe it'll do really well in South Korea. You never really know with these things. And then finally, I watched Picture This on Amazon Prime, a new rom-com that I was looking forward to. It sucked. It was actually just so dull and so boring. It's the epitome of streaming movies, as I said in my social media review this Thursday. And I actually want to shout out Tasha, one of my followers on Letterboxd and TikTok, who commented on my social media review saying, "The guru scene really irked me as a Hindu. It was exaggerated to comedic effect, and the perception of Hinduism by Western society is already, quote, weird and demonic." I don't think that sort of representation is helpful at all. And I totally agree with her, because even as a, white, non-practicing Christian or whatever you want to call me, I'm not religious at all. I'm open to the possibility of a God being out there, but I thought, is this a weird caricature of Hinduism and like gurus? I really appreciate her sharing her perspective on that. It felt like a weird choice and a little bit, I don't know, a caricature is what I would call it. But that's been what else I watched. Lots of stuff this week. What I'm going to watch next week, I said I would watch Memento this week, but I just didn't have time because I was really wrapped up in all of my Marvel movies. But next week, I'm going to watch the Beatles movie from like 1966. I think that's the next movie I'm watching in the Variety list. I'm also going to the movies like 5 times next week. I am seeing Opus, the Looney Tunes film, Black Bag, Snow White, The Alto Knights, and I'm also going to watch The Electric State, of course. So next week is going to be a jam-packed What Else I Watched section as well. And we still got The White Lotus going. We have some other TV shows coming out that are really great. I'm going to catch up on Daredevil Born Again. I'm sorry I didn't talk about that this week, but for now, that's been What Else I Watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 61, Novocaine. You know what? It was a fun time. Would I recommend Novocaine? For sure. But as for now, thank you all so much for listening. As always, please rate and review the show. 5 stars on all of your streaming platforms, whether that is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are an Acast-produced show. You can find us on all of those streaming services. Even on Spotify, you can drop a comment right underneath the episode. Let me know what you thought of Novocaine. If you are on the YouTube channel, where we are currently currently at 225 subscribers. That's very exciting that we got a little bump after my most recent Oscar video. It was really cool. Please like, subscribe, comment on this episode if you're listening to it on the YouTube, and make sure you're hitting the notification bell so you know when a podcast drops every Monday, and so you know when the YouTube videos drop as well. You can also email the show to get in touch with us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, or find me on social media. Instagram and Threads, we are at Watcher of All Things. The TikTok is at watcher.of.all.things. Follow me on all three of those. Letterboxd, you can follow my personal Letterboxd account. That's KikiJ70, KIKIJ70. Go check out my ongoing 2025 ranked list. Go check out my Variety Top 100 list. I also have tons of franchise ranking lists on there. Drop a comment on one of my reviews that you found me through the show, that you're listening to the show. I'll follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, Severance Season 2. Looking forward to it. I feel like everyone is watching and talking about Severance right now. Of course, it's everywhere, but that is going to do it for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.